Hi, nice to meet you. I'm Anaya, a sex and kink coach. I'm happy you're taking the time to learn about yourself and your sexuality. More than half of people have some type of sexual fantasy that is outside of the norm. The word kink comes from the term something being bent because of the idea that a kink is a bending of conventional practices of pleasure in new and different ways. Using kink is a way of adding new interests, fantasies, and ideas into your life that can bring sexual or non-sexual pleasure to you and or your partner or partners. When a kink is expressed within a healthy relationship and built upon a foundation of consent and communication, it can be a beautiful addition to a person's life and help build the intimacy between partners or within oneself. However, due to it still being considered a taboo subject and therefore not openly being discussed in today's society, many people feel a sense of shame around their kinks. Shame is defined as a painful emotion caused by consciousness of guilt, shortcoming, or impropriety by the Merriam-Webster Dictionary. As society has yet to integrate kink and fetish play into the status quo, many people feel a deep sense of wrongness for what excites them or what they fantasize about. This can cause them to feel shame, and this shame can create a negative cycle of emotions that causes us to question ourselves rather than embrace ourselves. In any situation you find yourself in, feeling shame towards your desires can cause a disruption that affects your views on yourself and thus your relationships with others. When kinky interests aren't normalized, it's not often easy to openly discuss them in your relationships, despite how important and positive an outcome it can be. According to a study done by Mariusz and Poat, shame can cause couples to feel isolated in their relationships, have poorer relationships with peers, and in some cases, it can even cause psychological distress. When looking at the impact shame can have on a couple's mental and emotional health, it becomes clear how important communicating one's desires are in order to have a healthy relationship. However, despite kinky play being a natural part of sexual exploration and slowly becoming more into the public eye, some kinks are still listed as mental illnesses in the DSM-5 or the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders. According to the article, The Medicalization and Demedicalization of Kink, BDSM play has been stigmatized through the use of medicalization since the late 19th century. Despite it being in the DSM, kinks are natural and normal and can develop both from our experiences in life or they can just happen for little or no explanation. The most important thing, however, and the key to healthy kink is exploration, open communication, staying safe, and making sure it's consensual by any and all parties involved. Anyone involved needs to have an understanding of what's going to be happening, and they must be able to consent to it. Also, it is important to note that at any point, consent can be revoked by either partner. The fact that certain kinks are listed as mental illnesses in the DSM-5 adds to society's shaming of kink and may be preventing its healthy integration into society. Despite the recent change to state that kinks are only considered illnesses when the person is in distress about their interests, the problem is that shame causes distress. Society causes shame, especially when your interests are categorized as an illness rather than just a natural part of development. In fact, did you know that homosexuality was considered a mental illness until 1973 when it was finally taken out of the DSM? When society uses the DSM to place things they don't understand, it doesn't just affect the people being put there, it also affects the way that society views these differences in others. In the research done by Mariusz and Poat, they explain that shame has an even greater impact on people who are in a sexual minority. Already faced with a lot of societal pressure, adding the shame surrounding being on the DSM-5 can really negatively affect the way that people feel about themselves, their sexualities, and their interests. Sex and shame should not be natural partners. When we try to confine sexual expression into what society finds acceptable, we end up limiting positive human expression while deepening shame. There needs to be a safe space where people can discuss their kinky interests and sexualities without the fear of being judged or reprimanded, so that they can learn how to express themselves in healthy and safe ways. Unfortunately, shame often starts developing at a young age, and when parents are not willing to discuss important matters, such as their child's developing sexuality with them, they can feel like they are not normal for these changes. Religious teachings have changed people's views about sex and kink. Many schools still teach abstinence only education, which teaches children that they do not have the power over their own bodies and that somebody else gets to make their decisions for them. Teaching kids that they need to wait until marriage also leads to a sense of shame around just thinking about sex. Schools and parents need to focus on providing comprehensive sex ed for teens that includes discussion about consent and encourages healthy communication and creates a space where they can feel free to ask any questions that they might have about their bodies or interests, kinky or not. This will help them learn and actually understand their sexualities and help them ultimately live safer, richer, and more fulfilling lives, hopefully free of guilt and shame. Pleasure, sex, and sexual expression are all a natural part of being human, and even for those who are otherwise on the spectrum of sexuality, such as people who are demisexual or asexual, shame can be a powerful force that stops people from living their most authentic lives. As a sex and kink coach, I want to help people to realize that they shouldn't feel shame for how they feel, what they fantasize about, what they desire, or even what they don't. Shame doesn't belong where healthy sex and positive sexuality should be. People deserve to learn who they are through and through without the fear of society and loved ones abandoning them. Everyone deserves a fulfilling, pleasurable, fun, and satisfying life, and for many, that involves living out their kinks and fantasies. At Pretty in Kink, I want to provide everyone with a place where they can learn about consent, communication, and safety while being able to explore who they are and take pride in their kinky interests.